So I recently watched a video about a guy who went to a Jiu Jitsu tournament and used different methods to prove that it is, like he said, it doesn't work. But at the end of the video, he made a really good point about how it lost the spirit of what it was originally designed for, and how it's a last resort, and how we kind of put it on this marketed pedestal that has been thrusted upon us. And as a guy who has competed in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I'm going to be very honest and say he is very right about the differentiations between how it's marketed and the reality of the sport. Because although I enjoy the sport and I enjoy putting on a gi and I enjoy rolling around, I think it's fun. It's a good way to meet people. It's a good way to at least get into the introduction of learning a new skill. Because before I started doing MMA and Jiu-Jitsu, I was just a nonstop partier who didn't have any direction in life. All my friends were shallow, who lived every day waiting for their next drink. And I couldn't find any valuable relationships because I had thrust myself into that lower echelon of society that just parties and takes place in what will be a modern-day Babylon. So, yeah, jiu-jitsu kind of altered my life. It didn't save it, but it put it on the right path. And I have to say that it taught me a lot of skills that you would look around in the modern day that a lot of people don't have. Things like how to deal with loss, how to deal with failure, coming up short, especially nowadays with the way modern rhetoric is. The slang word cope is used like it's a bad thing, but coping is usually just how you deal with when things don't go very good in life for you. And without any sort of coping skills, you don't have any mental health basis. Because not everything in life is going to go as we plan, because trust me, I know. I've had a lot of friends who have gone back on their words. I've had a lot of people break promises. I have been let down by people countless times in my life. And it's bad because for me it was harder to deal with that kind of stuff because I'm always the guy that makes sure that I remember every promise I make so I don't break it, so I don't leave people hanging. I've actually helped friends move, and people have said, "Oh, thank goodness for you, man, because you're the only one who came through." And then if I need a favor for them, they're nowhere to be found, right? It's a one-way thing, and that's why I've actually retracted some of that. But that's also one of the things about jiu-jitsu that has really helped me out. Differentiating between the way things should be and the way things actually go with friends and even in the sport of jiu-jitsu. Because we all hear that marketing thing, oh, leave your ego at the door. It's not about ego. It's not about winning. I can tell you from experience, as soon as you walk onto those mats, that is an absolute lie. Everyone brings their ego to the door. Everyone puts their ego on the mat. And yes, if it means getting one submission, someone might actually break your arm. It's pretty ironic, and I think that you got to pick and choose the lessons you want to learn from this and how you go about differentiating between hogwash and reality. Because like I said, a lot of the negative aspects I've learned to turn into positive aspects about life and how you respond to reality, and you could be grateful that you're willing to accept the reality of a situation before you move forward, instead of lie to yourself and find reasons why you should live comfortably in a lie that someone else or yourself has crafted for you. Like when I left my first jiu-jitsu gym, I already made a video on this and why I switched gyms, and there's actually a word for someone who does that called a creonch, aka it's like a traitor pretty much. And I don't think it was a very fitting term, even though when I came across my old professor at my new gym, because he showed up to that gym one time, he seemed very unhappy, and he looked at me like I was a creonch. Now, he didn't tell me that word to my face, but you could tell he was thinking it. But what I learned from that was that during that jiu-jitsu time when I was at his school, some people are kind of wanting to be kept there so they can keep the lights on. Like sometimes some professors will view you as a dollar sign. And as a student, that is not your fault. You're paying them for a service. You're taking it into your hands to want to better yourself. I think like regardless of whether I think jiu-jitsu works on the street or it's the end-all be-all of martial arts, which I really don't think it is, to walk into an environment like that and be willing to try and learn a really hard skill and get really good at something because you want to better your life, that takes a lot of character, in my opinion, regardless of what it is you're doing, because you're not partying, you're not slacking, you're not doing drugs, and you're not staying up like super late. Like you're doing the opposite of being a degenerate at that point. So to have that want, that mindset, that character met with negligence, dismissal, not being understood, right? Because that's a big thing is no matter how hard for the couple years I was at that gym, I was not understood. Even though I made it clear multiple times that this is what I was asking for, it all kind of went in one ear and out the other with those two professors. And now that I'm with my new professor, who is very passionate about building and growing and getting you to a skill level because he does it for a living, all I could say is I'm glad I found this guy because then you get to see that not everybody is meant to teach the art. Now, the black belts may be really good competitors, but not everybody who's good at a trade or a skill is always going to be the best teacher. Even my welding instructor, one of my former welding instructors, had a very bad temperament problem. So when I asked him a question, he responded by blowing up in anger to the point where he was foaming out the mouth 5 inches from my face, just taking all of his life frustrations out on me because he had a pretty questionable life background. But I digress. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should be a teacher. But although now when I ask the question, what can make my jiu-jitsu better, as opposed to, like, because I get a really concrete answer when my new professor asks me, you could do this. I noticed you're doing this a lot, and he'll introduce me to a concept that makes my game go up 5 notches, right? It's way better than, just keep coming to class. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing fine. Just keep doing what you're doing, buddy. Just keep coming to class. Just remember to keep paying that check like I was getting. There's still certain behaviors in all the dojos that I've noticed. I try to avoid people with those mind frames, right? Of this is my kingdom. I'm the superior one here. Basically someone who has their ego and their whole personality is caught up in their belts and their gi. Once you step outside of the dojo, no one really cares about that. Once you exit the gym, that fighting stays at the door. And it doesn't translate well to normal society. And not a lot of society wants to hear about judo tosses or jiu-jitsu chokes or Muay Thai strikes or anything like that. But those behaviors of people who allow it to consume their life, it's a good model of a mindset not to have, right? And I know I'm sounding redundant here, but as much of a unbiased take on jiu-jitsu as I could give right now, it was still such a net positive on my life. Even the negative experiences I've had with certain people, certain teachers, certain competitions, because there are some commissions that are very corrupt and there's some very bad judges out there and you see robberies all the time. But it just shows you this brighter reality that although things that are marketed are different from how they actually go, that doesn't mean you necessarily throw out the baby with the bathwater. So when I watched that video of that one dude who said, "Oh, I don't think jiu-jitsu's real," and I entered a tournament to prove it, yeah, you did. And you showed actually some very questionably technical aspects. As skeptical as I am of, like guys like Andrew Tate and their authenticity, I would have to say one of the things I do agree with him about is his take on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, how it's good for fighting in a cage and in a fair fight, but outside of the gym, there's no fair fights. It's do whatever you got to win. He's telling the truth in that aspect. So whether I think he's putting on an act or not, that's a really honest take that I could get behind. And it's interesting because it's the least likely thing I would probably admit to him being right about. And that's the thing I could really get behind, is that people take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as the end-all be-all when it really isn't. It's a sport. It's supposed to be fun. And as a sport aspect, I love stepping on that mat. I love competing. I love shaking hands after the dust has settled. I love all of the learning process. I love all that stuff. But I think when we get anxious for ideals and we get anxious for a way of life in which to live, we tend to get lost in the fiction versus the reality. But that's what I got to say about my jiu-jitsu journey. And I will see you guys on the next one. Let's go roll.